Hello. So it's officially Wednesday, the 17th of April, and I'm joined once again by the lovely Lee from the CPAA. For anyone who doesn't know Lee, which I'm sure everybody does at this point, but do you want to just introduce yourself to those that might be on catch-up or replay who've not yet said hello?
Sure. So I'm Lee. I'm operations manager at the Certified Public Accountants Association. So we're a small professional body, accountants focused on small practitioners. So people that are self-employed accountants that are working for themselves, and that's our kind of focus.
Yeah, and do you know, just before, as we always do before we get up on the chat, on the live even, we have a little bit of a chat to and fro, and I feel like we could have just gone on for a while because, as always, there's just so much going on in our industry. For anyone who doesn't know, DAS is on the second day, so the Digital Accountancy Show started yesterday. Today's the last day. So there's going to be, if you're going or you're thinking of going for this afternoon, because I realise it's already 12:35, loads of CPD content out there and loads of chance to network too. The next event, I could be wrong, but I think it is Accountex, which will be the 15th and 16th of May. I'm just going to double check that because I'm terrible with dates. And that's Accountex London, not Accountex North. So let me just double check that. Yeah, it is the 15th and 16th. And I should know this because I'm talking down there. So apologies. But that's a free event. You've got up to 16 hours of CPD. There's all sorts of suppliers there that you can talk to around demonstrations and things. You can meet new people. If you see me there, come and say hello because I will always make an effort to say hi to everybody. And if I'm talking to someone, again, don't be afraid to interrupt. I get that comment a lot. So I'm approachable is the point. So Lee, I'm going to hand this over to you because you've just sent me a link to an interesting report with Kantar here. I might not be saying that right, around understanding the characteristics of unaffiliated tax agents. So do you want to dig into that?
Sure. So it was, it kind of followed on from looking at the recent consultation in requiring agents to be registered with professional bodies. So HMRC have kind of been in a lot of research on this over many years, and one of the reports that they published back in 21 was kind of exploring who unaffiliated agents are and what kind of what motivates them not to be members of professional bodies. So like I was saying to you at the beginning, it was just kind of interesting to see how they profiled different affiliated accountants. So one of the things we were talking about as well before this call was sort of AML requirements and how quite often bookkeepers who are subcontracting can get caught in a bit of a trap where they feel they're covered for AML.
Yeah.
In the report, it talks, one of the typologies, one of the groups that it looks at are bookkeepers who feel as though they've got some level of confidence in their work because they're working under an accountant, even though it might be a subcontractor relationship, but they've got accountants that are looking at their work, and just how kind of shaky that confidence might actually be, that it's not really built on a solid foundation. Talk about the importance of checking your subcontractor agreements if you're a bookkeeper, and also still acknowledging that you've got responsibility for your work and for what you're doing. It doesn't kind of completely absorb you. You're looking rather confused, Rebecca.
It's not confusion. What it is that I'm just recalling conversations I've had over the last 3 years whereby, you know that I do a lot of subcontracting and we're all subcontractors, so we have subcontractors coming in. And we have a solid agreement with like either party, either way, where it's either we're the subby or we're the contractor. And it covers things like, whose responsibility is it for AML? What reliance can be placed, if any? We take the approach that we don't rely on AML undertaken in pretty much 99% of circumstances. We do our own, or we review what's being done, etc. So there's that. But the amount of conversations that I've had or heard conversations in as a third party, where it's, well, I'm just doing the bookkeeping. I don't need to consider this. They've got a year-end accountant. Anything would be covered under them, or they'd pick it up. Or that attitude of, this is just my work. This is my element. I don't need to focus on these other areas. And that's where things are going wrong, in my opinion. and it's very dangerous to have that attitude. But I've seen it time and time again. And I'll just highlight as well to anybody, I'm going to put a link to this, but just 2 days ago, there was an article that was released with Accounting Web where I spoke around this element regarding AML and why certain fines were propping up year on year on year and what we can do about it, just for some further reading. But just a question, Lee, on this. So do you think, in terms of responsibility on this element, I don't know how to phrase this, but there must be a lack of information somewhere or a lack of guidance as to why, this is propping up, that we've got these unauthorized agents, running certain services, etc. To some degree. I'm just looking at the percentage of agents there.
It's quite a lot.
Yeah.
There's a big population of them that are not members of professional bodies. It doesn't always mean that they've never been a member of a professional body.
No.
So some people just the thrust of the explanation in the report was that they don't see benefit for being a member of a professional body. They're either unsure as to what a professional body does, or they're unsure as to how it will benefit them. And I think it's the wrong way of looking at it. The main reason to be a member of a professional body is to demonstrate that you are upholding high standards.
Yeah.
And that's the main reason that you should be, and that will benefit you, and that will benefit your business and your clients. But the motivation has to come from a more kind of earnest place, as opposed to just what's in it for me. What do I get out of this? It's got to be, well, I want to demonstrate to people that I'm a professional and that I'm committed to high standards and ethics in a way that somebody who isn't a professional isn't.
Yeah, and I again, I think, we have touched on this a little bit in the past, but I'll play the devil's advocate with conversation I've heard again or been part of, or I always err on the side of, I think it's better to have a professional body behind you, and because then you've got the community, you've got the training aspect, you've got CPD, you've got someone to go to bounce back ideas. Just even if you're a sole trader who doesn't want to network, you've got that there, and that support, and again, keeping on track of updates, etc. It's all there. But the other side of the fence, a conversation that I was part of about a year and a half ago, essentially a round table of some very influential individuals in the accounting space. The conversation propped up of why do we need a professional body, and the number of clients who ask what professional body you're a part of is very minimal. They don't seem to. It doesn't seem to be a contributing factor as to why they come to you in the first place. But again, I think it's that, for me, it's always having that second level of support that I look for. And I think it is great to have that community element there, and meet other people who are in the same space. So there's so much to it more than that. Yeah.
I think most clients assume that you are regulated in some way.
Yeah.
It's talked about as a profession, and quite often people talk about accountancy as though it's like, there's like three big professions out there. There's like legal, medical, in the traditional kind of view of things. So people do assume that there's more regulation going on than there actually is. So I don't think necessarily people question your professional credentials until something goes wrong, and that's when they prefer. As at CPAA, we get horror stories from people where they'll come to us, the founders on the internet. They assume perhaps we regulate all accountants, which we don't, and we'll explain kind of what our role is and where we sit. But there's loads. Like one particular story was a guy that had set up. He just abandoned the practice. He'd just left it. He'd left the clients high and dry. He'd not done any of their work. He'd taken all the fees. Just left. So there's these clients that are then looking for somebody to raise this issue with. Where is he? Can you do something about this? He wasn't our member, as far as we're aware. He wasn't a member of any professional body. He just set up and kind of fly-by-night operation. And it doesn't say that every accountant that isn't a member of a professional body is kind of unscrupulous or trying to do wrong. But it does create a space for wrongdoers to kind of
Yeah.
do that without a requirement for a professional body membership.
And I think the awful thing is that realistically, anyone can call themselves an accountant. You can. And when I first heard that the first time, I thought, no, that can't be right. And I looked into it, and sure enough, I was like, okay, I think it came off the back of a question that a student had asked me regarding the difference between a bookkeeper and an accountant. And they're like, well, essentially, I'm doing the job of an accountant, so I'm calling myself an accountant. And yeah, we had a conversation about that because I thought, again, that's really dangerous because the whole piece around ethics where you've got to provide, professional competence and due care. If you are labeling yourself a certain title, whether it's accountant or otherwise, you might be misrepresenting what services you are actually able to offer. And you might be more tempted to say to a client when they ask you, can you do such a thing? Oh yeah, we can do that, without having that relevant expertise to go with it, because you don't want to be, I don't know, but it's not good to be in that situation.
And again, I mean, we've seen examples quite a few times of people that have learnt to use software. So they file their own tax return or whatever, and then they just think, oh, this is easy, I can be an accountant. And they'll hold themselves out as an accountant, and they'll attract clients. And what they're doing is just mindlessly inputting some figures into TaxCal or whatever, and then zipping off a self-assessment, and they don't know what they're doing. They don't have a clue. And if something goes wrong, there's no real recourse. The client only, HMRC will only chase after the client. It's their tax bill, their tax liability. So the client will then have to sue the accountant through civil court to get any losses back. So they'll have to incur the loss, then they'll have to sue the accountant, and they'll have to incur costs while they're suing. It's a very long process. And then the accountant may not have PI if they're not affiliated with a professional body. So if the accountant can't then pay out anyway, the client's at a loss. So it's really very kind of dangerous. And like I said, like, clients walk into this assuming you are regulated, and that's why they're probably not asking who
No.
regulates you.
And what's, for those that don't know, again, just because we do talk a lot of abbreviated words sometimes because I was so used to saying, well, PI is professional indemnity insurance.
Yes.
And you need that if you're running a practice. Like, it's a requirement, and actually something to be careful of. Depending on which professional body you're a part of, they sometimes have a listing of approved providers, and you have to go with that provider, like one of the list. So if you're a member of any professional body, just a quick check, some homework. Go back and check that provider you're using is approved. Because I've seen people fall down in that area too.
Check your cover limit as well, because
Yeah.
professional body might stipulate a level of cover. So it might just be your turnover, it might be 2.5 times your turnover. So it's important to check what the requirements are with that.
Absolutely. God, that's interesting. I'm just still running through this. So, what's, I know, again, we covered this a little bit last time, but from a point of view of running a practice, if you're not with a professional body right now, there's no real impact to you over the next sort of couple of years or so. We're only in 24, but was it 2028 where they were considering making, or putting into place that you had to be part of a professional body? So what, I'm just thinking, those that don't have a professional body and never have done, because there are some bookkeepers and accountants who are qualified by experience now, they're going to face quite a change, aren't they?
Oh, yeah. And I mean, depending on how this is brought in, there's potential for a scramble to join professional bodies. So, quite from our point of view, from CPA's point of view, it's kind of preparing for things like that. Like, how, how's the market going to react to that? How are people going to react to it? And because in this Kantar report, just going back to it, there's a significant population of unaffiliated agents who are close to retirement. And this is one of the reasons they remain unaffiliated. They don't see, they think, I'll be retired in a few years. I don't need to bother becoming a member of a professional body. So will those people just simply retire? Will it push them kind of into retirement? But then also, like, how are people going to manage the requirements, the entry requirements? So, like, CPA does have a route for qualified by experience, where you won't necessarily, but we're thinking about changing that. We're thinking about implementing a requirement that you have a qualification to join. most professional bodies require you to have some sort of qualification to join. So, how long is it going to take you as a bookkeeper or an accountant while running your practice to get qualified? And I guess it could be that you should have done that before you set up. I don't know, but there's a lot of questions as to how this will work.
It's a good consideration because, as we know, a lot of students that I talk to who are, they've been part of the ACCA, for example, and they want to set up on their own. They can't. There's restrictions in place if you're a student for what services you can and cannot provide. And it's the same with the AAT and other professional bodies too. So if you don't have, any professional body right now, how is that going to impact you? Because you're going to have to, I don't know, maybe even look at subcontracting those services out to somebody who does have the qualifications until you're able, or shutting down altogether. Because I'm just thinking, I don't think you can. I don't think you can even offer. I don't think you can even advertise that you're offering those services, even if you subcontract, if you are a student.
So, I mean, I won't speak for the bodies, but I do know certain that ACCA is a massive no. You can't practice. You can't be a tax agent while you're a student. That's something they take you through a disciplinary for. So yeah, there are some that I think you can. Don't quote me, but I think like AAT, ICB, there might be certain services you can offer while you're a student.
But it's capped. So you have to, for instance, you can't prepare a set of management reports unless you've completed level 4 with ICB. I know that for a fact. With the AAT, you cannot provide financial year-end statement compliance until you've completed level 4. There's certain elements of bookkeeping, but I'm pretty sure you can't, even though you can offer bookkeeping, you cannot offer the preparation of VAT returns, which falls under the bookkeeping sort of element to a lot of bookkeepers because it's part and parcel of what you're doing. That's going to be a struggle. I know we're 4 years away, but if I was not part of a professional body now, I'd be doing a heck of a lot of research.
Yeah, I mean, if I was sat there now in practice and I was unaffiliated, I would certainly be looking for where I could get. That'd be something that I'd be, that'd be one of my top priorities at the moment. It would be trying to get into it because, like I said, it's going to be very difficult, and it's better to do it now than be forced into trying to do something last minute. Because again, CPAA, we don't fully know the requirements of what a recognised professional body will be, or kind of how HMRC expects professional bodies to behave. There's obviously certain kind of ideas and concepts they've thrown out there, but things like barriers to entry are a big one. And it's like CPAA currently does have a QBE route, but because of this, we're considering closing that off. So that will mean people will either have to take our exams or will have to have sat some other professional qualification.
And personally, I understand the argument on one side where if you've been qualified by experience and you've been doing this work for many, many years, that argument of, well, if those doors are shut, you are going to have to undertake some study of some kind in order to pass an exam to get that qualification. And they might be sat there thinking, well, I've got all of these years experience, like this is just a waste of time. I'm not used to exams anymore in this format, and I'm going to have to relearn all of that. But the other element to me is there isn't a tiny element of that that's going to be a good thing, because you are sometimes, and I'm going to say the 1% here of those that are qualified by experience may not have kept up to CPD to the best of their ability. And because they're not accountable to a professional body, it's not sometimes at the standard as others. And again, that's the 1%. But if that is the case, then undertaking that study route is going to help them, and that's in turn going to help their clients, and there's a knock-on effect. So I see it as a good thing, but a frustrating thing for some. Definitely.
I mean, we might be biased because I think we both like qualification. We both like studying. We're perhaps biased. We perhaps see the advantages of study. But you're right. Like even if you don't like it, even if you kind of loathe the idea of, and again, for a lot of people, when I speak to accountants that are qualified by experience, a lot of times the response will be, well, I don't like exams. I don't like sitting in an exam. I don't like doing something in an exam environment. and I get that. I don't like exams.
I hate exams.
Yeah, you don't. I like qualifications. I don't like doing the exams.
Yeah.
But if you think about it, an exam is just a way of telling you, as an individual, whether you've actually internalized the knowledge that you're supposed to have gained while you're pursuing that qualification, and that's all it is. It's not
Yeah.
it's not designed to kind of trick you or kind of just put pressure on you or ask you something awkward. It's designed just to see whether you've actually attained the knowledge from the studying that you've done, and that's all it is. So like I think if you view
Yeah.
it like that, like actually the big benefit is studying to get up to that level, isn't it? And getting that knowledge. And like you said, if you've not studied for a while, you've not kept up your CPD, it's a great opportunity to actually get back on top of your game again.
Yeah, and what I will say is, whilst we're on the topic, because obviously, we've got the CPAA logo, etc., up there, and I have reviewed some of the textbooks, etc., from the CPAA, and I've also looked at, having studied the AAT, ICB, ICAW, I've looked at ACCAs, I've looked at CIMAs, and I think if you were going down that route, and call me biased, but again, I've looked at all the different textbooks across the board over the last 15 years or so. And I think you are probably one of the better supervisory bodies in terms of the way that you lay out those textbooks and that knowledge, because sometimes other professional bodies fall down in the terms of, it's not realistic, it's number crunching, and it's not something that you can take and put into practice in the real world. Whereas, again, the information scenarios, etc., that I've seen with your books, you do that. So there was, to me, I don't know, and I can see it from both ways, because I've actually worked in practice and industry, and I've been through the study route and all of that. I can see the difference between a textbook that is simply just a textbook, or just this is what you would do, da 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 da, to, okay, well, this is what you need to do, but actually then you need to register to do this, and you need to go to this page, and here's an actual illustration of what you need to be doing to make sure you're compliant. Here's some scenarios, real world application, and that's the difference. So I would always, and you call me biased, but I would always recommend a CPAA if you're going to think about going down that route personally. So
That's good,
yeah.
because this is how we've designed our qualifications and how we design our final qualification. It's all about practicing accounting, small practices, and how to apply knowledge as opposed to kind of a theoretical understanding. I mean, like I don't know like about you, but I'm sure at some point you were studying like management accountancy, and you start talking about like absorption costing, and like a portion of the cost is absorbed into the product, and you just kind of think like this all sounds very philosophical. It gets a bit kind of bit out there, but
If I tell you, I remember studying that element and thinking, I have no idea what's going on here. And I actually ended up, I remember, and it was my AAT studies, and I remember sitting there and having to learn how the exam works in order to reverse engineer the answer, because I didn't get it. And I could not get it in, it just would not work. And then when I got that first job in industry, they said to me, oh, by the way, you're going to be helping to prepare, at least 10 sets of management accounts a month. Here you go. Here's all the costing. And I saw it and I was like, this is easy. Like, why have we made it so difficult? What the hell is that? So it's just, yeah. And I actually think, what you learn working as an employee sometimes can be very different to actually working in practice, because you've got to have every hat on. And even little things such as knowing how to register as a tax agent, or what you actually need to do in the real world for AML and ethics and the things. That's the difference, which I think, again, you do a very good job of bringing in, that sometimes, and I can understand why other professional bodies don't do it, because it is a lot, but I think you do a better job, essentially.
Like I said, we really sort of streamlined like a lot of the stuff. Like I mean, when we've been talking about this final qualification, we're finalising the syllabus and going through QA at the moment. But like some of the focuses like that we've put in there, like cybersecurity from like an accountant's point of view. That we felt weren't really being properly covered, and how to explain things like that to a client. Like what happens if a client gives you an email and says, "Is this legitimate? Is this actually from HMRC?" Could you spot like the issues? Like if it's a scam email, do you know how to identify that?
I wonder, bear with me a second. I can't show you this. It's not that one. So oh Christ, I didn't know that was a thing, by the way. When I started in practice, I didn't know that there were fake letters being produced by people on behalf of HMRC, scam letters, etc. And thankfully now I can tell the difference. But I would never, again, just from like textbook knowledge, etc., have known that that was even a thing, or to be aware of it, or to be aware of, again, cybersecurity and IT checks backing things up, because that's not my remit. That
No, that's
yeah, as an employee, you would have had an IT department, but when you're an employer, it's like, again, that's another hat that you've got to put on and be aware of. So how do you bring that information to the forefront of that when you are, yeah, a professional? But I can imagine from your end, it's actually quite difficult to get all of this into into the books in the way you do.
Yeah, I mean, this with the new one, this is where we've kind of come out. We've been trying to work it because we want it to culminate in a single assessment.
Yeah.
So it's going to be one. Well, it's ended up with there's going to be one exam and potentially kind of portfolio sitting alongside that. But this one exam is designed to test three kind of very broad domains. So it's kind of difficult as to how we've kind of pushed that in. So my initial focus was trying to get it to be a kind of case study based thing where you'd be given like a client, a fictitious client, and then ask questions around that fictitious client. But yeah, kind of through QA, it's kind of ended up.
Yeah.
There's different sections to the exam now, so it's kind of becoming this
like a case study. I think that's far better, because again, one of the issues that I had, that I know a lot of students have, is throughout your studies, sometimes you might have that end of year exam, or like every quarter exam that's specific on the areas that you've looked at. But then if that's just on those areas that you've been studying, that one bit, when you get to the year end and you have that one exam, you're like, that's not quite enough. It's not, I've forgotten that. Like that was Q1, and now having to get this all together in an exam that doesn't ask you, again, it doesn't give you like a real world scenario of, this is a case that you could come across in practice, sort of thing. Like what would you do? And sometimes, again, some of the way that exams are tested, they don't give you that opportunity to have a objective view, like like for instance, if I was an examiner and somebody said to me, well, I've interpreted this data this way and therefore my answer is this, I'd say, kudos for your thought process, it's there, but you misinterpreted this if they were wrong. But you would still get some element of, okay, you're on the right track, but you just need a little push in this way. Whereas some of the exams that I've undertaken in the past have fallen foul, and it's, this is the answer, it's a yes or no, it's, you've forgotten to put a digit to 2 decimal places in your bloody answer, so you failed the exam. And it's like, really?
No, and this again is like the main thing, because quite often people will learn for an exam. I don't know about you, but the amount of times you hear people say, oh, I really crammed for like whatever my advanced tax papers, and then like, don't remember it. I don't deal with tax. I just do financial reporting, and I can't remember any tax because I've learned it for the exam. And I think really, particularly as you get higher levels, an exam shouldn't just be testing knowledge recall, it should be testing application of knowledge. It should be testing, like you said, thought process.
Yeah.
That individual kind of is able to analyze something and put together kind of a decision and action based on that analysis. And it's not necessarily about just being able to go, oh yeah, I can, I don't know, something like your return on capital employed. Like, oh, I can remember that formula, so I'm going to like, I can just regurgitate that formula.
No, and that's what, again, me being me at the time, because I think I've said this before, my short-term memory is awful, like truly just awful, and my long-term memory is amazing. Like, I can remember date, times, smells, scents, everything from a certain day going back, where I was, what I was thinking at the time, what I was watching on TV, whatever. Short term, no chance. So when it came to exams, the only way that I could pass some of those exams was to remember the way that the examiner was testing and the formula involved, enough to get by in the exam, which in the first 3 years of my career post-qualification, there were some areas that I know I definitely struggled on because I had to take that approach to pass the exam, because I wasn't being tested on thought process per se. It was remember this formula to do this one bit that they're testing in this one way. Like when you've got children and you've got to work out long multiplication in a certain way, or you fail, but you get the same answer over here in a different way.
Yeah.
It's like that pulling together of that. But yeah, I think a lot of students definitely struggle. So if there's another way and there's a case study or a different way of examining knowledge, etc., at the end, again, I think that's the best way forward, personally.
Yeah, I mean, because like I said, it's figuring out how somebody thinks, isn't it? That's if you're looking at what a practitioner needs to do, they need to be able to have a certain way of thinking and finding out information. It's less about knowledge recall, because the breadth of knowledge you need is just so much. It'd be very difficult to recall it all. And it's about tying it back to, like you said, real world. So like we've looked at the sort of clients our members deal with. So it's people like in construction, taxi drivers, restaurants, things like that are the sort of businesses and the clients that we focus on in our assessments, as opposed to, you're not going to get like odd kind of case studies about kind of big international companies, because that's just not what our members are dealing with. So
no, but then again, if you want that sort of level, then I would highly suggest working in an accountancy practice that can give you that, that knowledge and that element in for the bigger force, because it, again, like everything, you really need to have that experience and test. I guess I always look at this from running a practice point of view, that you need to have had that knowledge and that experience in different areas to know how you want to work, where you want to work, like what clients you want to work with, what industry, what size you want to run at. So you could run a really successful firm working with sole traders only, or just CIS, or just a certain area. Absolutely fine. Same with the larger firm. If you just want to focus on the larger firms and have 4 or 5 clients, you can have a successful firm that way. But you really, really need to have that experience and choose off the back of that what professional body you want to go to, who can support you the best, to me, in whichever way you want to go down. So I think it's always it's a real careful consideration that you need to take before applying to a professional body, because I think each has their merit in one way or another. But yeah, you really got to think about it. But yeah, that's interesting. Okay, so in fact, we've gone over time, as we always do, Lee. We've got so many topics that we could just go through. But what we'll do is we'll leave it there, because it's Wednesday and we have gone over time. But you can always catch me and Lee in the group, in the Facebook group, or on LinkedIn, where we'll be talking through sort of the latest sort of developments in bookkeeping, accounting, finance, and all things CPAA as well. So if you don't know what the CPAA is, Lee, do you want to just talk us through what the CPAA is for those that haven't watched us before or seen any of our coffee chats?
Sure. So CPAA is a small professional body. We're focused on practitioners. We provide our members with a whole bunch of kind of benefits that are all designed to help them raise the standards. So we provide a comprehensive CPD program, over 20 hours of webinar content, seminars up and down the country. We also provide AML support. So we have a lot of templates and guides that members can use, but we also have a direct AML support line, so you can ring up and speak to a compliance professional about your AML needs. We have a tax and legal helpline, a whole bunch of things that are designed to sort of support you and help raise your standards.
And if you want to get in contact with Lee, you can again find him on LinkedIn or in the Facebook group, and also on the CPAA, I think it's .org.uk, is that correct?
.co.uk.
.co.uk.
It
I'll
used
pop
to
that in the chat.
Sorry, it did used to be .org, but we are now .co.uk.
Yeah, there you go. That's where I picked it up from. Okay, perfect. Well, thank you very much for those that joined. You can always watch this on replay again afterwards, and I will catch you all in the group. Enjoy the rest of your week, and thanks again, Lee. We'll talk to you soon. Take care.
Okay.